Hi, my name is Heidi Fowle, and I'm the owner and director of Incredible Animals, a small animal shop in Winthrop, Massachusetts. We're located on Shirley Street, number 465, and we offer a variety of educational programs for children, and we also do pet therapy for nursing homes and retirement facilities. And today what we're going to do is show some of our animals, and my assistant Jessica Hamway will be helping me, and we'll take them out, we'll explain a little bit about each different type of animal, and if anybody has any questions, we'll answer them. And we'll just get started today. How about right over here to our right? We've got a friend peeking out from the bushes here. This is Monty, and Monty is a ball python. He's right here. And Monty is a young ball python. He's only a couple of years old right now, probably about 3 years altogether. And normally you can tell the age of this type of a snake because they'll grow about 1 foot for every year of their life until they're full grown, at which stage, he probably just sensed the heat from my hand, which is why he pulled his head back there. You see, snakes are virtually blind. They don't see very well. And he's sticking his tongue out right now, trying to sense what's around him. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but where you would think of as an upper lip is a series of holes that are called heat pits. Now that tells him when there's something around him. See, he just moved away from me again. And you can tell he's probably more timid than anything. Ball pythons are known for their inactivity. Out in the wild, what do you guys think they do the most out in the wild? What would you think, right off the top of your head? If you were a snake, what would you be doing in Africa? He first of all wants to live in a place where it's nice and warm and where he can absorb a lot of heat, because have you heard that reptiles are cold-blooded? If you have, it's not exactly the truth, because reptiles are not cold-blooded when it's warm out. When it's warm out, they're going to be the temperature of whatever the air is around them, and that's going to be warm for the most part. If it's cold outside, a lot of times what a reptile will do is crawl under the ground to absorb the heat from under there. But in Africa, where the ball python comes from, they're not too worried about having to find a source of heat. They just find a nice little hiding space, and they'll curl up. That's why they're called a ball python, because most of the time you can find them curled up in a ball. Now we're going to let Monty come back and climb the tree in a little while. But right now we'll take him off. Oh, he's enjoying this. Feels very comfortable in here. I'm going to do a few things with him, the first of which he's probably going to enjoy. Now snakes don't get happy or angry or feel the way that people do, but they can appreciate certain things, like the fact that I'm warm right now is very good for him, because he's a bit chilly. It's cold outside, and in the time it took him to come into the building, he lost some of his heat. So what he's doing right now is wrapping around me just so he can absorb my heat. Do you think he's going to choke me to death? Anybody worried about that right now? Because you don't need to be. I'm not worried, because I know that all Monty is doing is trying to absorb some of the heat from my body, and it's actually going to make him a little bit more active in a few minutes. When he does start to get warm, that's when he'll move around more. And you might notice when you pat him that he looks very shiny, but he's not slimy. Recently, we rubbed him down with some cod liver oil. If anybody out there has ever had to taste cod liver oil, you probably know that it's not the most pleasant taste that you can find. But he really appreciates the rub with the cod liver oil because it makes his scales a little bit more moist. Reptiles don't have skin like people do. They have scales. That's their type of covering. And we can look by stretching him out. Jessica, would you like to hold his head for me? We'll stretch him all the way out. We can see that all together, he's probably a little bit more than 3 feet. And Monty is still shedding some of his scales right now from the last time. Normally they come off all at once. However, Monty is a snake that doesn't really like to eat very much. People are always concerned that a snake might bite them, but this snake really wouldn't bite even the food that he's supposed to be eating, so we would be lucky if he had a better appetite. And because it takes a lot to get Monty to eat, we do things like rub him down with the cod liver oil. Sometimes we even actually have to feed him some baby food, Gerber meat sticks. Jessica's very talented at being able to slip one of those right down Monty's throat. But the fact that Monty won't eat is because that he came from the wild originally. This snake was probably born in Africa and caught, And because they're not an endangered species, they're allowed to be transported here to the United States. And during that time, he probably lost his appetite pretty much, and he's not very interested in eating anymore. So what we're trying to do is stimulate his appetite by making sure that he has all the vitamins and things that will keep him healthy. So he's a good-looking snake otherwise. And again, he's really got no motivation to bite anybody. When he sticks out his tongue, what he's doing is picking up particles in the air. It's almost like smelling an apple pie being baked. If you smell something like that, you're bound to probably get hungry and want something like an apple pie. And when his tongue picks up particles from a human, can everybody rub their fingers together like this? Monty sheds his scales all at once, or he should, but we shed our skin constantly. So when we rub our fingers together, we can drop thousands of skin particles all at once. And Monty here picks those particles up. And if he picks up particles from the type of food that he likes to eat, like a hamster, then he's going to be more, or a gerbil rather, he's going to be very excited and chase the sense of heat down, track the animal, and eventually he can strike out at it. And when we take a look at the length of him, it's the top 1/3 of his body that is actually what he uses to strike with. And that's basically where his neck is located. Now, he's got a full skeleton in here, many ribs. And his vent is located right here at the bottom. That's how you find out whether you have a male or a female. And there are also a couple of little hooks here at the bottom, which are called spurs. And those spurs are the remnants of legs on snakes. Now, the difference between lizards and snakes, guys, do you know what it is? There are two differences. For the most part, lizards don't have legs. Snakes don't have legs. Lizards do. That's the difference. There are some legless lizards. However, you could tell the difference if you even got that close by finding out whether or not they have eyelids. A lizard would have eyelids where a snake would not. Snakes also don't have ears. They have a bone inside of their head, which is the remnants of where ears would have been located. And it's a sense that they really didn't need to use because they're very good at picking up vibration. So that's a little bit about our snake. We have some other reptiles that we'll see a little bit later on in the show, but now I think we should move on to we actually have two parrots with us today. So Jessica, if you could bring out Sammy, I'll bring out Ruby, and we'll let Monty, the ball python from Africa, enjoy his tree for a little while. Now the next two animals that we'll be bringing out are also African animals. This is Ruby, and Ruby is an African gray parrot. And Jessica will be holding Sammy, who is a Senegal parrot, native to the area in Africa called Senegal. Now, Ruby can actually do some tricks. So if we can have a close-up on Ruby here, we'll have her do some things for you. Now, she'll, first of all, probably want to just get used to the atmosphere here. There's some bright lights that she's not familiar with. And at the moment, she's just preening her feathers. And it's actually after her bedtime. A parrot in the wild will be asleep at night. But Ruby's a bit of a party animal, so she'll stay up late and show us a few things. First of all, we can have her wave to everybody. Rube, can you wave? Oh, she's being shy. She can talk, but she often chooses not to. When she gets excited about what's going on around her, she'll really pay more attention to what's going on than being a show-off. Now, here we go. We're going to have her preening her feathers a little bit, and I can tell that she's going to do some type of a display for us. She's trained to display some behaviors, like if I snap my fingers, that's Ruby. Sammy just snapped. She dances. Okay, there you go. Good girl, Ruby. Now that we have the camera on you, can you wave to everybody? That's a nice wave. Oh, she's still being shy. Now, recently, Ruby stopped wanting to do the dancing. Okay, and she also her favorite thing to do is wave. She often does that even when she's not asked because she knows what a laugh it gets from people. Now, when she got really bored with these things that she had already learned to do, I decided to start working with her on some new behaviors. And since I couldn't think of anything offhand, I let Ruby decide what would be next. So she started showing off, and she might choose to do that for us now. Although I'm going to give her just a second to preen her feathers. Okay, Ruby, are you ready? Come here. Can you step up here? And how about hanging upside down for us, Rube? Now, parrots have this ability because their feet have 2 toes that point forward and 2 toes that point back. If you look at any of the birds that you'll see in Winthrop, you'll never find a bird hanging upside down in the trees unless it's a parrot that's escaped from someone's home. Now, once again, we'll see if she wants to do some of this. Now, parrots very often, there she goes, they like to play. And she would spend a lot of her time in the wild playing and releasing energy. Whoop, there she goes. Now, that demonstrated something for us, so I'm glad she did that. Ruby has the feathers on her wings trimmed, and that's like a haircut. It doesn't hurt her at all. And the point is that we don't want her to fly away, because obviously Winthrop, in the summertime, it might be a nice place for a parrot to hang out, although there probably wouldn't even be the right type of atmosphere for her and the different types of food that she would like to eat out in the wild. So we have to make sure, because she's an animal that grew up being taken care of, that we provide for her. Now, she is also trained to work because she's a highly intelligent animal. She likes to learn things and be stimulated. So teaching her things like waving and dancing are things that excite her and stimulate her. And she's also trained to go to the bathroom when I tell her to, although she can only do that about every 20 minutes, which is what's natural for their system. And if she's frightened, she might go to the bathroom too. Now, what that would do is if she were out in the wild and she were frightened by something, she might go to the bathroom to make herself a little bit lighter while she took off in the air. Now, many parrots have bright colors and they don't camouflage. That's because they're large enough and secluded enough at the tops of the trees in the rainforest that they really don't have to worry too much about predators. But Ruby, being a gray parrot, would camouflage out in the wild. And they also have some really interesting behavior. Well, interesting depending on what your opinion is. They do things like follow elephants in Africa, and they'll eat through the elephant's dung to find certain seeds that have been already digested by the elephants, and therefore it's easier for them to eat. She might also eat bugs. I'm sorry, but I don't think we have bugs with us today, or Ruby might have done a nice little display of eating some worms. She just made a sound, and she will probably, when we put her down and ignore her, talk a lot for us. So let's see, why don't we just show Sammy for a moment, because he is a good example of camouflage. If you hold Sammy up even higher, Jess, maybe we can get a close-up on him and turn your hand outward to the left a little bit. Sammy has got an orange breast with a lot of yellow in it, and the green as well, and the gray head. The gray head, like Ruby, would camouflage out in the wild. The orange breast, it would blend in with the sunlight if he were sitting in the treetops. And the green back on him, if you can just turn your hand in the other direction, Jess. The green back, obviously, if there were a bird of prey or someone flying from above, he would blend right in with the treetops. And this is another type of a bird who will come down on the ground occasionally to feed on food. And one of his behaviors that's very comical is that he will hop with both feet, sort of like a kangaroo. And he does that for quick transport on the ground. He can be very fast when he wants to be. And these birds are comfortable on the ground. We have another bird, just like Sammy, at the animal shop who says his name, and one of his favorite things to say is, "Where's Sebastian?" Because he'll climb down off of his cage and crawl around on the floor looking for someone or something, and very often he'll camouflage, and we can't find him for a few minutes, so he'll hear everybody saying, "Where's Sebastian?" Sammy says things as well. He's probably more talkative than Ruby is, and some of his vocabulary includes things like if he sees a favorite thing that he wants to eat, he'll say, mmm, and his eyes will dilate with the excitement of some good bit of food. And parrots can digest a lot of different types of food. So not only do they eat the things like seeds and nuts that we typically think of, but they also love fresh, clean water, either having it misted on them from a hose or a spray bottle, but they also love a big bowl that they can take a bath in every day. And among seeds and vegetables and fruits, other things that he would like to eat would include pizza, McDonald's, let's see, chicken wings, Chinese food is some of his favorite thing. Hong Kong dragon is where this bird prefers to eat. And gum or jelly beans are definitely not chocolate. Chocolate is something that could be toxic to them and do them a lot of damage. But The typical types of food that you'd be told to feed a parrot if you bought one at a pet store really aren't what should be included in his regular diet. It's sort of like feeding your children fast food, to feed a parrot seed throughout its entire life. He needs healthy, nutritious food, and we also give him cheese and even tofu. Lots of healthy things, and monkey biscuits are one of the favorite things that these guys like to eat. So that's Sammy, our Senegal parrot, and Ruby, our African gray parrot. So far we've seen African animals, so why don't we move on to another African animal. We have some cages underneath here, and we'll bring out some mammals now. And if you guys would like to come and take a seat right in front of us, we have a couple of kids in the audience who might like to hold some of our animals. Now, this is kind of like a Christmas present, isn't it? Do you guys want to just explore around in there and see what you can find? I believe, Jessica, is there one animal in this cage or two? Oh, very good. We've already figured out what it is. Why don't you guys come right over here next to me, behind the cage, and I'll take him out for you and give you a chance to hold him. The animal that we have here we call Simon, and one of you guys said what Simon is. What is he? He is. He's a hedgehog. Hedgehogs are a very unique type of an animal. They don't have many close relatives. Before you guys touch him, let me just tell you how to do it. Simon is a very relaxed hedgehog. He's been somebody's pet since he was a baby. Take a couple of fingers and just pat him down the back. Oop, we're getting electric shock from the rug, not from the hedgehog. And can you guys look at your fingernails? Feel that. Now, if you think you filed your fingernails into a point and poked somebody with it, would that hurt? It probably would. Now, if you look at the hair on Simon's belly, you'll see it's stiff and bristly. It's where he gets the name hog. And he gets the name hedgehog because they like to hide under bushes and in grass. And he's got this stiff, bristly little hair like a hog. On his back, he's got hair growing that's covered with the stuff your fingernails are made out of. It's called keratin, but you don't have to remember that right now. And the reason that Simon won't stay still is because he's a small mammal, and these guys are at the bottom of the food chain. Can you guys figure out any animals that might like to eat him? You can pat him while he's walking around. Or you can...
Sonic?
Sonic is the name of a cartoon hedgehog, so when people can't figure out what he is, when everybody calls him a porcupine, I say, if I called him Sonic, would you know what he is? Now, he's licking his chops right now. He's wiggling his nose around, and he's got big, beady black eyes. So people always assume that he's a type of a rodent. And I was explaining that he's a unique type of an animal because although there are two different types of hedgehogs, one being European hedgehogs and the other being African hedgehogs. And this guy is from Africa. He's full grown, and he's about the size of a European hedgehog when it would only be a few weeks old, because European hedgehogs are a lot larger. They're about the size of of a football, and they're a lot darker in color. Now, the reason he moves around a lot, he's always wiggling his nose, and he's got the big black beady eyes. We'll explain those attributes. He's always wiggling his nose because he uses his nose to dig around in the dirt. What would you be looking for if you were digging around in the dirt for something to eat?
Ants?
Yeah, and what are ants? All different kinds of bugs. That's what he likes to eat, bugs. And he'll also eat some vegetables. And because he's a small animal with a lot of predators who might like to eat him, if you were a big eagle, these barbs on his back would not be a big deterrent for you. You could just go ahead and get through that, no problem, if you had strong talons. Now, when he is afraid, he'll tuck his head and all of his legs into his belly, and he'll curl right up into a ball. And it'll be about the size of a softball, and that protects him. You like my bird hat? That protects him because most other animals that will probably just go ahead and walk away from him if he's prickly. And another way that he'll protect himself, he's got two really good deterrents for other animals trying to eat him. First of all, he lives in tall grassy areas. We've got some hay in here to represent that kind of an area, but he'll hide in the grass, and he'll chew on the grass, and he'll get big green bubbly foam coming out of his mouth, and he'll spit it all over himself. And it's not to clean himself. The reason that he does that is so that he'll camouflage and he'll smell like a plant rather than an animal. And out in the wild, hedgehogs might also hunt on poisonous frogs. And they don't hunt them to eat them. They hunt them so that they can secrete the poison by biting the frog, and then they'll probably roll around on top of the frog and cover themselves with poison. So sometimes people think that hedgehogs are poisonous. If you guys would like a chance to hold him, all you can do is put together two hands and kind of balance him around a little bit, because you know he's always going to be trying to hold his head under. But you know, Simon isn't really even a good representative of what a wild hedgehog is like, because this little guy isn't really afraid of anybody.
Did he lick my hand, or does he have a wet nose?
He has a wet nose.
Oh.
He might have licked your hand, but he's probably just feeling you with his nose. So we'll put Simon back in, and we'll get out another small mammal. Why don't we bring down the blue cage, Jessica, and we'll look at some bunny rabbits and guinea pigs for right now, and then we'll get back to some more exotic type animals. Now, of course, you guys have seen a bunny rabbit and a guinea pig before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Very often, we accept donations from people that, when you guys walk around on the carpet, that might cause a little bit of static electricity. So walk slowly, because when you pet the animals, you don't want to get a shock. A lot of people will bring an animal into their home, like a bunny rabbit or a guinea pig, and not realize how much care and attention that they require. And because of that, they're considered an easy type of an animal to keep as a pet. And when it's found out that the cage takes a lot of time to clean, and the animals do require a lot of attention, and they get sick if they're not treated properly, sometimes people figure out that they don't have as much time as they thought they would have to dedicate to one of these sweet little animals. So the majority of the animals that you'll see today came from homes that had the best intentions for them, but in the end really couldn't provide for them anymore. And unfortunately, we got to the point where the majority of offers that we get, we now have to turn down, because we just only have so much room and so much time to take care of animals ourselves. However, if somebody is in a situation where they'd like some advice on what to do with an animal that they can no longer keep, we'll be happy to maybe give you some advice if you want to call us and tell us the type of animal that you have. These guys here are closely related to each other. They are different types of rodents. And the guinea pig comes from a rodent family called cavies. And they have some of the largest types of rodents that there are. One of the guinea pig's cousins is a Patagonian cavy, and people always confuse them with a dog or a rabbit or something. They never know what it is. Now, these guys don't have very long legs, and let me ask you two a question. Can you see a bunny rabbit or a guinea pig climbing through the trees? Can you picture them doing that? No. No. They like to live on the ground, or where else do you think they might make their home? If they're not going to climb the trees, and they don't want to be very good, rabbits live in holes. Burrows are what they're called.
Oh, like
and
Bugs Bunny.
Right, just like Bugs Bunny. Some stories that we hear about animals are partially true. The guinea pigs come from South America, and they live up in the mountains, and they live in areas where it snows, so they have a nice heavy coat of fur, and they're very uncomfortable when it gets really hot out. They also have very special needs in their diet. They require hay in order to digest their food. They need a lot of vegetables, but not too many different types, because that could actually make them sick if they got too much. It'd be like if you guys got to go out on Halloween and you brought your bag of candy home and your mom told you you could eat the whole bag all at once. That might sound like a good idea, but how would you feel the next day? Oh, you might feel really sick. So if I gave my rabbit and my guinea pig a big vegetable buffet with all different types of food, it might really make them sick. And they have a very slow digestive system. It could make them so sick that they could actually die from it. So what we give our bunny rabbits is pineapple, because that helps them to process fur that might wind up in their stomach. And for our guinea pigs, we make sure that they get a lot of vitamin C in their diet, especially broccoli, and tomatoes are good sources of vitamin C for these animals. And on top of that, they get what's like dog food for bunny rabbits and guinea pigs especially, and they need fresh water on a daily basis. And they spit. And when you guys were little, did you ever blow bubbles in your cup? Yeah, I used to do that. Well, these guys sort of do the same thing. They spit right back into their water bottle, so we have to make sure they get cleaned out so they stay nice and healthy.
Why is the bunny making his nose go down?
The bunny is wiggling his nose. He might be smelling what's around him. He looks very relaxed. And you can see that these guys are really comfortable with each other. Do you have some questions?
Why did when I went over there one time, I saw the snake's mouth open.
The snake hardly ever opens his mouth. He might just be a little bit tired and getting a big, deep breath of air. We're talking about the snake who's still climbing around in the tree over there. And apparently he yawned, which I'm sorry we didn't get on camera because that's a unique thing to see. If a snake opens his mouth to eat, they'll actually unhinge their jaws, so that's why they can open very wide and fit something down their throat that doesn't look like it could even go into their mouth. And you'll also see a little tube on the bottom half of their jaw. It looks like a straw, and that's their breathing apparatus. So let's move on back to some more exotic type animals. And before we're finished, we'll bring out some more mammals. Why don't we bring out the hermit crabs and the tarantula, Jessica? Guys, we're going to let some animals loose on the floor right here in front of us right now. Just so nobody gets excited, I'll let you know right now, the tarantula will not be one of the animals that we'll let loose right now. We have a couple of hermit crabs here. And do you guys know where you could find hermit crabs out in the wild?
Beach.
Right, at the beach, right here in Winthrop you could find them. Why don't you sit right over here, and I'm going to put a crab in front of each of you.
Ooh, hello, crab.
Now these little guys...
Shell gets too small for it, so it just gets out and finds a new one.
Very good. Now somebody just pointed out that when the hermit crabs get too big for their shell, what they do is just crawl out and find another one. That shell is not a part of the hermit crab's body. It's just a house they found to live in for a little while.
He hides in this shell.
Here we go.
He's hiding.
Now we've actually got a number of shells that we're offering to these hermit crabs so that they can relocate, but they get very, very nervous about leaving their shell. They have to be really comfortable with the new place that they're moving into. A hermit crab would prefer to stay in its shell and die than leave its shell to find another area if it wasn't sure that it was able to.
Why?
Well, because that's how vulnerable they feel when they come outside of the shell. That's his protection. Hermit crabs have an exoskeleton, which is what makes them closely related to an arachnid. Now, the next animal that I'm going to bring out here,
Tarantula.
a scorpion would also be an arachnid, but this is a tarantula. We call this tarantula Rosie because Rosie is a rose-haired tarantula native to Chile. He doesn't eat chili, but he does eat meat. Now, the type of meat that he would eat, what do you guys think that would be? Do you think he would maybe hunt on deer?
Yeah.
Maybe something a little bit smaller. It'd take him more than his whole life to eat a deer. He would probably like to eat bugs, but out in the wild, he would eat a lot of mice, really, when he got larger than he is now.
Oh, yeah.
He's still a rather small tarantula, and there are many, many different types of tarantulas. Now, this tarantula is not that venomous. He's probably as poisonous as a bee. So Rosie, again, is a rose-haired tarantula native to Chile. And if you can see this area of her back, I'm not sure if you can get close enough to realize that there's even a small bald patch there. And when these animals are frightened or feel like they need to defend themselves, they don't bite. What they'll do is take their hind legs and rub it against their back and shed some of the hair. Now that hair is really like fiberglass, and it can feel very itchy when you come in contact with it. If anybody's ever broken a chili pepper and touched it to their skin, you know how itchy that can feel. And I would compare that with the tarantula. Now also what I would like to do is possibly show you the fangs. They're located in the, if you sit right down, oh, I'm sorry, shocked you again. If you sit right down there, I'll give you a look too. Arachnids have 8 legs and an exoskeleton, and the fangs are located at the very front. This might be just a little bit
I see him.
hard to focus in on. We can give that a try again in a couple of minutes. Now, another thing about the tarantula is that she has tiny hooks on the bottom of her feet, which allow her to climb and hold on to things. So she's comfortable in this position.
So if there's something upside down, she can just climb on it?
Well, she can climb upside down if she was climbing up a tree or on leaves or things like that. That's why maybe if you were cutting down a banana plant, you might not even notice that there was a tarantula hanging upside down on the leaf underneath. And if you frighten them, and a wild tarantula would feel differently than this tarantula who has been...
Bite.
Yeah, they just might. But this tarantula is really so relaxed, and she's never had to use her fangs to hunt for food. So it really isn't something that she's likely to do. Look, the hermit crab is trying to find a hiding spot, so he's relocating up the leg of my pants because he's looking for a dark spot. Although he's got eyes in the very front of his head, they really don't work the same way ours do. The light is very bright in here.
Cool.
And we've got a really good look at the tarantula's face right now. I'm sorry, the hermit crab's face.
Just want to come out.
This guy's very active over here.
He's maybe scared. That's scared.
Here we go. Take a good look at this guy. Oops.
He won't come out. What's this thing on the end of him?
There we go. There's a hermit crab, and this is a rather large hermit crab. And you can probably get a good look at his eyes there, and of course he's got antennae and his legs trying to find out what's there in front of him. And there's a softer half of his body located inside this shell, which is why he requires it for protection.
Yeah, so if he gets out of it, and if something else goes so fast, it can eat it.
There's one claw located in the front here that he will use to pinch, and he also uses that to eat with. And these guys like to eat the same kind of food that we like to eat. Do you know what their favorite thing to eat is? They are scavengers, so they'll eat almost anything. They would eat some bugs or vegetation, but one of their favorite things to eat is one of my favorite things, and that would be shrimp.
Oh.
Yum. They don't find a lot of chickens where they live because they're from the ocean. You don't see a lot of chickens flying around on the beach, do you? No, not really. Okay, well, guys, oh, actually, our tarantula is displaying something very interesting. Can I have you guys move over to either side of me here?
I see it.
Come right over here. What is he doing? Why don't you tell us? What is he doing?
He's making a web.
Yes, he's actually spinning a web right now. And these are the spinnerets.
Oh, that thing in the
I'm
back?
afraid we won't be able to see him unless I turn him around a little bit. We might continue.
What's that thing
Guys,
right
why don't you
back?
each sit over? Can you sit over to this side of me so we can see the back of the tarantula? Just going to guide him around a little bit.
What if there was 100 feet on a 100-foot tree and you wanted to get down?
He
Will probably get his...
He could climb extensively. He's a very good climber. Now, we do have a bit of the web coming out here. I'm not sure if he's continuing with it, but these are the spinnerets in the back here, and that's where the web comes from.
Oh.
Now, what do you guys say we move on to another animal before we run out of time here? We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left.
What's that little thing up there? What is...
These are the spinnerets in the back. He's got 4 eyes located on the top of his head. 8 legs, 2 feelers in the front, and his fangs are located at the front of his face. And this guy is a South American tarantula, although tarantulas can be found in the warm areas all over. Now, we've got our hermit crab moving pretty quickly there. Jessica, why don't we bring out the ferrets for a moment before we move on to the last couple of animals that we'll show you. Now, you guys are welcome to continue playing with the hermit crabs there because they like a bit of exercise. Jessica and I each have a ferret. We're going to hold them up next to each other and do a little bit of comparison. I have Fergal with me. Fergal was given his name because it's a European name for a European animal. Although ferrets are not native to Ireland or even England. They naturally come from Germany. They were imported to the UK around the time that the Black Plague was making people sick everywhere. There were rats bringing plague all over the United Kingdom. And these animals hunt rats. They also hunt on guinea pigs. Sorry, not naturally. They would hunt a guinea pig, but they don't come from the same areas out in the wild. Now, they're very flexible because they hunt on animals that live down in burrows. So some of the animals that we've shown today that live in burrows would be rabbits, snakes, and they might also eat a bird or even insects, maybe some plant life, but people often make the mistake of feeding their ferrets cat food. And ferrets are not able to digest vegetable protein, so cat food is really the wrong thing for a ferret to eat. Our ferrets are nice and fat because they eat ferret food all the time. We give them other fatty supplements, and occasionally we'll give them a little treat like a raisin. Now, we're going to have them demonstrate some of their flexibility here. They have bones. People often think they don't because look at what they can do. They can kick his legs right over the back of his head. I think he's probably the only one in the room that can do that. He can fold himself in half. And if they choose to, they'll show you some of the playful behavior that they display when they're running around on the ground. Very often they'll flatten themselves out like a pancake. Sometimes they'll be running really, really quickly and they'll just fall asleep all at once. They're either very active or fast asleep. They also, guys, I'm going to scratch him right here because this is where his scent gland is located. When I scratch him, you take a sniff, and then I want you to tell me if you can guess who he's related to. They're afraid to smell. Look. He just smells a little bit like hay. He's very clean smelling today. Our ferrets have had their scent gland removed, so they're not as offensive as a wild ferret would be, but they're related to, any guesses? What do you think? Do you think they're related to dogs? What animals do we have around here in Winthrop that smell pretty bad? Want to take a guess? What if I said skunks? Would you believe me? They're in the family Mustelidae, and you can remember that because Mustelidae, they all have an odor to them, and they use their scent to protect themselves and really to mark their territory. So when a ferret wanted to mark his territory, he would go to an area where he could find some animals who were burrowing, and he wouldn't bother to build his own burrow. He'll just eat the animals who live there and then mark the territory with his scent, and that's pretty easy. Well, people figured this out and trained ferrets so that they could release them into barns and have the ferrets scent up the whole barn, so the rats wouldn't want to come back there. So that's a real old-fashioned type of exterminator that we have here. Very effective at eating different animals and keeping the barns free from rodents and disease. So ferrets have been kept by people for a long time, but they're now fashionable to have as a pet. Well, ferrets, as I said, are smelly. They're also nocturnal. They're awake all night and asleep all day for the most part. And they have toenails that don't recede back into their paws like a cat's do. So if you hold them, you'll always feel their nails. They can feel a little bit sharp. And although our ferrets are really sweet and friendly and lovable, not all ferrets act this way. They're still a wild type of an animal. They're not fully domesticated, and you want to be very careful of having a ferret around any other small animal. We don't let our ferrets interact with our other small animals, although directly supervised and knowing what nice ferrets we have, we're not afraid of them jumping up to attack anybody. But at the same time, they do have the potential to eat a lot of our other animals, and for that reason, we keep them in a separate area than the rest of them. If you would like to hold our ferret, you just sort of cuddle him like a baby like this, and when he starts jumping around and moving all over the place, that's just what ferrets act like. He might sniff you a little bit. He's another animal. Big black beady eyes do not mean you're a part of the rodent family. It means that you're a nocturnal animal who has eyes that are designed for seeing at night. Now, the ferret will come over here and start playing with the hermit crabs. What we can do for a minute is take our, guys, why don't you step back to the plant over there by the snake. We're going to take our hedgehog out of this container.
Who's just drinking the water?
Oh, and I interrupted him from drinking the water. We're going to take our hedgehog out and let our two ferrets play together. Put him back in where the ferrets came from. Oh, very good. You've seen our program at School Age Express, haven't you?
Yeah.
We offer educational programs for schools, and we visit all of Terry's Little Pumpkins locations in Winthrop, including School Age Express. So these guys are a little bit familiar with our program. And we have demonstrated in the past how, oh, Fergal's a bit uncomfortable at the moment. If you hold the ferret by the scruff of the neck, this is how we accomplish their grooming. Oh, fast asleep he is. This has a neurological effect on the animals, and because he's so relaxed at the moment, this is how his mom would hold him if he was a baby, and we would clip his nails or give him medicine or anything that we needed to do holding him in that position. If I were to restrain him like this and ask Jessica to clip his nails, he'd probably become frantic and might, move around too much, so the most effective way to restrain him is just by the scruff of the neck. And one more big yawn, Ferg. There you go. That's okay. Now we're going to give these guys a chance to play together. Now, these guys really learn a lot of their hunting skills from fooling around with each other. They'll pounce on each other and attack and maybe even bite a little bit, and they look very ferocious when they're playing together. But they're just practicing.
Can I pet them?
Of course you can pat them. One rule that we have for all of our animals, and this is a good reminder for anybody who's dealing with an animal that they don't know very well, you really don't want to put your fingers near an animal's face. So that's our rule. We wiggle the fingers and say no fingers near their faces. And just pat them on the back, which they're very comfortable with. Now, speaking of the types of animals that these would like to hunt on, why don't we bring out Charlotte and Chloe next? We have,
Do they like climbing?
they are more of an animal that would live underground rather than climb, although they do have the ability to climb.
Just like groundhog.
Groundhogs, I don't think you'd find climbing many trees. But the next couple of animals that we have are going to demonstrate what good climbers they are.
Rats are
What do you think that we have here? Are they, what did you say?
rats.
They are rats. Very good. These are descendants of Norwegian roof rats. They're a type of a rat that was brought to North America hundreds of years ago when people began immigrating here. And they're very popular little animals and hardy. Rats out in the wild will do just about whatever it takes to survive. They'll attack even other rats if they need to. They'll eat garbage, and that's where they come in contact with a lot of disease and bacteria, and they will spread these problems, but they're usually not the cause of it. Even when rats were spreading the plague through the United Kingdom, the reason was because the plague was carried by fleas, and the rats were bitten by the fleas. So therefore, the rats were carrying the plague, but they weren't the cause of it. So rats out in the wild are really just a small mammal that is a part of the food chain. They breed prolifically, which means very quickly. If you took these two rats, we do have two girls here, but let's just say we had a boy and a girl, and we left them in this room, their lifespan is about 3 years. So let's say we came back to check on them when they were old, retired rats. By the time they're 3 years old, between the first two rats that you had, being able to breed many times throughout the year, having about 8 offspring at a time, and all of their offspring being able to breed at the same time, you would probably wind up with 1 million rodents, starting from an original pair within their lifespan, which is about 3 years for a small rodent. Now these guys have toenails that are so small we don't even bother to clip them. But you can see that they're very effective for climbing.
They want to get out.
They're always climbing around and looking and being curious. I think they're very comfortable in there right now, though. And you know what? Do you think it would be a good idea if we let the ferrets out right now, considering that the rats are here? The ferrets might get very excited about seeing the rats. Now we can see how this is Chloe, and Jessica has Charlotte. They are sisters. They came from the same litter. Wild Norwegian rats would be gray or brownish. And these guys have different color patterns because they were bred probably to be food for reptiles. And our reptiles, as we mentioned, weren't very hungry for a while. So now we've kept them as pets, and they're a part of our animal family. And they're very clean. They're also very neat. And they'll eat almost anything, so they're really easy to take care of. So out of all the animals that we have here today, believe it or not, the only ones that I would really recommend that you could try as a pet would be a rat. Their lifespan is so short, in fact, that by the time the children got tired of them, they would probably be ready to retire themselves. We have our hermit crabs dancing on top of each other right now. So there's a little bit of something going on off camera. They're wrestling. Well, we're going to put Chloe and Charlotte back right now. Monkey biscuits are one of their favorite foods as well, so that's some of the things that we offer them, as well as fresh vegetables and fresh clean water and clean cage every day. Now, we have 3 last animals that we're going to bring out, and I think we're going to bring them out just about all at once, okay? So let's move our ferrets over to the corner. And Jessica, if you would bring down Spot and Prince Charming. And if you can just have a seat again. And I'm going to bring out Leonardo here. This is Leonardo, is our turtle, often confused with a tortoise. So we're going to talk about the differences between turtles and tortoises. And then we're going to talk a little bit about another type of a reptile. This is a leopard gecko that I have here, which is a type of a lizard. Originally, her name was Spot, which is the reason why is obvious. She's covered in spots being a leopard gecko. But I think we should rename her Cleopatra. She comes from the desert, so not exactly from Egypt. Now, can you pat her tail for me? Tell me how she feels. She's a bit bumpy, but is she slimy? Guys, can you sit right down? No. Do you really think so? She's a little bit cold, but not exactly slimy. As a matter of fact, I think she's so soft, she feels a bit silky. Think maybe she feels like velvet?
Do these things can lift off the tail?
Oh, very good question. We just had a question about the tail. The size of the tail is interesting. She stores fat and water in her tail. It's like the hump on a camel, but in reality, camels can't store water in their tail, but leopard geckos can. So she's able to go through periods in the desert where she's experiencing drought and famine, no food or water. Now, another thing that's quite interesting about her, we talked about the differences between lizards and snakes, being that lizards usually have legs and they also have eyelids. Even though she has eyelids, she'll often lick her eyeballs to clean them. What do you think that she likes to eat?
Do you know what? I got that information that she feeds off her tail.
Yes? Where did you get that information? That she can survive?
Animal CD-ROM.
Animal CD-ROM. There's lots of information on the internet about animals.
No,
and that's not the internet, a CD-ROM.
That's a program.
Now she's actually shedding some scales from her toes right now. And she's also got little hooks on her toes that allow her to climb very well. Now, since her cousin the turtle is taking a walk here, it might be a good time to have a look at him. We'll bring him back.
What is he, a snapping turtle?
He's not a snapping turtle. He is a box turtle. And the reason he would be called a box turtle is because his shell, not only can he hide in his shell, but he can also close his shell up in front of his face.
Yeah, and animals think he's a rock.
Right, some other animals might assume that he looks like a rock. Now, a big difference between a turtle and a tortoise is that turtles swim and tortoises live on land. So when you look at their legs, if they have legs that look like an elephant's, big fat stumpy legs, that would be a tortoise. Now this guy has graceful legs designed for swimming. So that's how we can tell that he is a turtle. Now another way to tell is, for instance, I had him out last year wandering through somebody's backyard, and he decided that he wanted to dig and eat some slugs right out of the backyard. Now turtles will eat almost any type of food in their habitat, vegetation, bugs, things like that, and tortoises really only like to eat vegetables. Now this guy loves to eat almost anything that will give him. He eats tofu and vegetables and bugs and different things all the time. Tofu is one of his favorite food items. And he really doesn't he doesn't have any teeth. He's got what's called a beak, and he doesn't really use his beak to bite. He'll use it just to eat food, and if somebody were to torment him and poke him in the nose too often, he probably would go ahead and bite. But now I'm going to put him down, so let's sit down and give him an opportunity to take a walk on the ground and show you how turtles are not exactly a slow animal. So this is Leonardo, and Leonardo's going to come down here. Another thing that I should mention about turtles is that on their shell, they have a lot of different geometrical patterns, but when you look inside of any one of these circles or squares or whatever it looks like to you, you'll see a number of rings, and those rings represent how many years he's lived. Now every year, like a tree, they go through a growth spurt, and that leaves a ridge on their shell. So that's what will enable us to determine how old he is. Right now he's about 15 years old, and I believe that Leonardo, being a western box turtle, will probably live into his 30s, possibly even longer than that. So he's native to the western United States and Mexico. Now we're going to let him down. While he takes a walk around, we're going to look at our last animal, which will be Prince Charming, who is, of course, a frog.
What are these holes in this?
Very good. There are holes in the side of the lizard's head, and those holes are the remnants of ears. And the lizard really uses the sense of vibration to, rather than hearing. So he doesn't really have a true hearing, but he has the bone structure and the setup for ears, although they're really not functional. Now this is a frog, and right now he's a bit more active than he normally would be, and I think the lights have made him slightly drier than he likes.
Can I let her do something?
You can let her go ahead and take a little walk on the floor. That would be okay. Now, our frog, Prince Charming, is a white tree frog, and they're native to Australia. They have suction cups on the bottom of their feet, so we'll do the same type of an experiment we did with the tarantula and show you how he can hold on and climb. Now, frogs and toads have a lot of differences like turtles and tortoises. And one of the main differences is that frogs have nice, long hind legs. You can see how long his leg is there. That's why I guess they're supposed to be a delicacy in some countries. Toads have shorter legs. The tree frogs have suction cups on the bottom of their feet, which allow them to sit up in the trees. They'll eat mostly bugs, some other things in their diet, maybe even centipedes. And for some larger toads, you could even find them eating things like mice. Now he will camouflage out in the wild. Prince Charming can go from a bright green to a dark brown, and he's actually appeared in a commercial before. And someone was afraid that he was getting too cold when we had him sitting under lights to keep warm. So they went ahead and covered him with a blanket, and they ruined the filming for the next hour because Prince Charming went from bright green to dark brown. So that was a bit of a problem. Now he's got a lovely color right now, and you can see how that would help him to blend into the trees out in the wild. Before we're done today, I'd like to offer, if anybody has any questions, Jessica and I could try to answer them for you. Do you guys have any questions about any of the animals that you've seen here today?
Can I hold that?
Of course you can. You can hold him, but you can expect him to be sticky and slimy. Most reptiles are not, unless they're an aquatic reptile. He's an amphibian, which is not a reptile at all.
Would he bite?
Spot has a mouth. Any animal with a mouth can open it and use it to bite, but he doesn't have any teeth. The frog here actually has sort of a serrated mouth. So it's sort of like tiny, tiny little teeth in there. Toads do not have any teeth. She probably wouldn't feel too comfortable like that. Do any of our grown-ups in the audience have any questions? Anybody want to know anything about any of the... One thing that I should probably mention is that I know we didn't talk about is the lifespan of a parrot. Parrots don't live to be 100 years old, as people normally report that they do. Parrots do have a long lifespan, but that usually lasts to about 15 for a little parakeet, all the way up to maybe into the 60s for the largest types of parrots. The bigger they are, the longer they live. Questions? I'd like to thank you all for joining us. And once again, my name is Heidi Fowle, and we are Incredible Animals located in Winthrop. We offer many different types of programming for groups of all ages, as well as birthday parties. And if anybody has any questions, you can contact us by contacting WCAT or us directly at 617-539-0211. So thanks for coming, everybody, and I hope we'll offer some further programming through WCAT, a bit more diversity about our local ecosystem and the native animals in the area. So thanks again, guys, and we'll see you all soon.